Bit of fun. Were we rolling? You probably wouldn't joke that you didn't. My favourite thing about when we're talking about fasting is when you accidentally find out you're doing something good. Because as far as I don't eat until about 1 p.m. anyway, and like that is that fasting?
Coward fasting, yeah.
Oh, for fuck's sake! Right, my name's Michael. This is How to Get Good. I'm joined by Benny, joined by Dan, and we're going to be discussing, I guess, things in the like personal self-improvement, health sphere that you may have heard of, and we'll be getting to the what, the why, the when, how to do it. And today's episode is all about something I actually have no knowledge of, TRE. I don't actually even...
Time-restricted eating.
Some people call it fasting.
Different thing, but we'll get into that in the episode. I think like the fasting stuff is most... I mean, it got pretty mainstream, or at least in my circles a couple of years ago. Everyone was trying to do it. There was, you're adding butter to your coffee, you're doing the bulletproof stuff, you're trying to get into keto the whole time, and it's all kind of mushed into one big ambiguous ball of of like...
Just diets. There's I mean, it's got nothing to do with keto though, does it?
It has some crossover, but I think like we'll kind of jump into like what parts of it actually cross over and what parts you're optimizing it for. But so you were just saying that you skip brekkie and...
Not with intention. I simply listen to my body, and I have a black coffee in the morning, and that sets me up till about like midday, 1 p.m. And then I will eat something. What is like? Can we
one big meal? Are you then having a couple of big meals?
It depends on how busy I am. Depends on like what's available. I like to have like pre-packaged meals when I'm at home, when I'm trying to lose weight, or like trying to be a little more intentional with my eating. But if I'm in the city, at the office, running between, it could be a banh mi, it could be a... I am very fast and loose with what I eat.
So you're a convenience-based faster.
Yeah, and I listen to my urges. I have very little self-control. So, if I walk past and there is a deal on, like karage at the sushi store, they're throwing it out in the hot box, I'll scoop it all up.
You've really somehow taken the like listening to my body and made it a terrible, terrible thing. I just listen to my body when it says...
I've got to be true to myself.
Karage chicken, I just give it what it needs.
Well, what happens if there's... Again, what is time-restricted eating? Right, like we've established that I've got dog shit diet protocol. What is time restricted eating?
I think maybe one for Dan the Rain Man, but maybe like I think for me the interesting structure is like what are the different goals one can optimize from these different kind of protocols, and then maybe that into what are the different types of them and the nuances between them, the differences, and then some of the pros and cons of each.
Cool. So I think it's probably like 3 different types of goals. One is you're looking for a productivity hack of having more energy. And so that's probably why, Bevo, you're leaning more towards fasting in the morning. So you're optimizing more for increased cortisol and noradrenaline. The other type of goal is for a leaner body composition and better metabolic health. And that's where time-restricted eating as an ongoing practice is more optimal. And then the last is longevity. And so... this is where you're looking to optimize more for cellular maintenance and renewal. And so that's where a 24-hour, 236-hour practice can be more beneficial.
Sure. And so just to kind of break down each of those things a little bit further. So fasting, the first one you're talking about, is that, when people talk about intermittent fasting, is that what that means?
Yeah. So like intermittent fasting, as it's been popularized, is probably like there's a few different ways that's put in place. One is compressing your eating window in every day with your maintenance level of calories or the amount of calories your body naturally needs. Compressing that eating window into a short period. And most people do that by fasting in the morning and feasting in the evening. But what that can lead to is that you go to bed and you're not fully digested, and that can disrupt your natural sleep quality. And so there's a whole bunch of downstream impacts of that. Time-restricted eating, I suppose, is a type of intermittent fasting, but it's a method where you're applying more of your chronobiology or your circadian rhythm. And so there's this diurnal cycle and a whole bunch of hormones for your metabolic health. And so time-restricted eating is all about having breakfast in the morning after you've had perhaps some morning sunlight exposure and a bit of movement, and then having your final meal of the day as a light dinner and as early as possible in the day so that you are going to bed more fully digested, maximizing your sleep quality and a whole bunch of other benefits through the night. And then there are kind of like other variations of intermittent fasting where you might have, which goes into the world of like more calorie restriction. So those two, intermittent fasting of fasting in the morning and feasting in the evening, and time restricted eating, which is like aligning more to your circadian rhythm, is about having just the amount of calories that you need for your body composition and your level of activity. As you move into calorie restriction, which drives a whole bunch of other benefits, some overlapping, that's where you might do, say, like the 5-2, or, you know, where you have 5 days of your normal calories and 2 days of like half of your calories, let's say, which goes into calorie restriction and then extends all the way out into fasting for a day, 2 days, 3 days, 7 days. You know, you might be a yogi and do it for a month or two.
Is this not like, I just thought the science was you have a calorie limit, you hit that calorie limit during a day. Are there ways to optimize beyond that? Or are we getting into like
there's two different things here. So like calorie restriction has been pretty well evidenced now around longevity benefits, you know, both in mouse models and in humans. And so that's where you're optimizing more for the longevity of restricting your calories.
Yeah.
And then there's the timing of when you have the calories, right? And so time restricted eating is all about aligning that to your circadian rhythm so that you optimize more for your metabolic health. While intermittent fasting, which is like trying to have a period of no calories by compressing your eating window and trying to get the best of both worlds in a way.
Okay, so I think like if we come down to what people are maybe optimizing for, or at least I know that you, Bevo, and myself are optimizing for, is the quest to get shredded and jacked.
Absolutely.
So my understanding, Dan, is the type of fasting that I've been doing for a long time, which is similar to Bevo, which is skipping breakfast, eating a big meal at night, is probably not the most optimal version of trying to achieve those goals.
Yes.
If we had to like just condense time restricted eating, what I listened to before was like having some
Eat like a king in the breakfast, lunch like a prince,
like 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. 10 a.m. Like what's the period?
And then dinner like a pauper, and as you know, up to
I like that.
4 hours before. So you're basically you're front loading your calories, sort of aligns with your circadian rhythm, and you're going to bed more fully digested. If you try it, Bevo, what you'll experience is you'll very likely have deeper sleep, so more delta brainwave sleep, which is good for your androgen hormones, but also very physically and cognitively restorative. And you'll wake up in the morning feeling more energetic, and you'll wake up naturally earlier.
But I also I'll wake up hungry, won't I?
That's right. You will have more ghrelin activation.
But then, so I've tried to swing from what was a skipping breakfast, having a black coffee, having big meals in the afternoon, evening.
It's insane because that feels better. It's like, less food.
So, one, it's way easier, but also it's like easier in terms of like you don't get as hungry in the morning if you go straight into the coffee, etc. Way more convenient. Like you can go to work and then you have dinner at home, and from a social perspective, you eat with your partner or your friends
like
or whatever.
Built around like
So I find that one much easier, but for the types of things, I also found it very difficult to hit my caloric, the right amount of calories, and to get enough protein in, because when I would start eating and I would be pushing past like 16-8, which is 16 not eating, 8 eating in terms of the window, I would be pushing all the way down to 1 or 2 meals, so more closer to like 20 hours not eating and 4 hours eating. And then the meals would just get so big, and then I'd just be fully stuffed, not getting enough of the right macro mix in.
And you'd be a sloth for 4 hours.
Being a sloth for 4 hours. And yeah, I think, I don't actually know the information on this, Dan, maybe you do, but having such gigantic meals is probably not optimal for actually absorbing the nutrients from those meals, and maybe having an insulin spike that's, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, when it comes to protein, absolutely. But it's also, there are some studies around intermittent fasting, so compressing your eating window within reason, because like compressing into 4 or 2 is a limiting factor. But say 6 or maybe 8, some people actually overeat because they've gone through that period of fasting in the morning and they're so hungry through the rest of the day that then they either binge on more calorie dense foods or have more calories. And so it can go both ways. Yeah. Absolutely, it's more practical. And I adopted that in my mid to late 20s of doing intermittent fasting through the morning. But a lot more of the research now, particularly led by Dr. Sachin Panda, is that early time restricted eating, where you have a bigger breakfast and a lighter dinner and early as possible, will optimize more for your metabolic health and improve sleep quality. But it's not the only thing to optimize for, because there is a cognitive benefit of having more cortisol and adrenaline in the morning when you're fasting. And there is a longevity benefit from calorie restriction, but that might come at the expense of lean muscle mass and being jacked.
And that's and shred. And that's definitely been my experience, which is if I don't eat all morning and then I start eating at 2, 3, 4, whatever it may be, I feel much clearer, much sharper, much more energy, much more concentration. Now that I've kind of moved to this other time restricted eating protocol, which is trying to eat like a king at breakfast.
Is that analogy? Because I remember that, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of words and numbers.
King,
I'm
breakfast,
getting here.
Prince, lunch,
King,
pauper,
Prince, pauper.
Early afternoon.
Yeah. I mean, we don't want to demoralize the paupers, but it is
from a serfdom level of time.
It's a intuitive framework to understand, I suppose, the principle that you're eating more to your circadian rhythm and you're front loading your calories and looking to have dinner earlier in the evening, because some people have dinner at 9 p.m, go to bed at 11 p.m, and it's like,
that's me.
You have not even fully digested your food.
I thought you were about to say, wow, that's great, but you were saying no,
it's not.
Because then you're not even. Ideally, you want to go to bed.
You don't digest.
You want to go to bed fasted, right?
Yeah. So, again, the world of dietetics and nutrition is enormously complex, and there are so many different contradictory studies, and so and there are so many different variables that you might be looking to optimize for, and so it's never as simple as a hard and fast rule, because having some carbohydrates in the evening before bed can support testosterone and sleep, but if you're looking to optimize more for your metabolic health, early time restricted eating is more optimal than delayed intermittent fasting, where you fast in the morning.
Yeah, and so when I have tried to shift to this new version, which is big breakfast and then stop early and then stop 3 to 5 hours before going to bed to try and improve my sleep, etc., I've found that almost impossibly difficult because I'm so hungry by the evening.
Does it get better with practice?
Or there's also some other things you can kind of do to get rid of that hunger as well.
Yeah, so right? There's no need to go too extreme where you're going 5 hours before bed, but 3 to 4 hours is probably a good rule to begin with. Even going for a walk after your final meal of the day is a good thing to incorporate for your blood sugar management and overall digestion.
When you say walk, what do you mean by walk also? Like 2Ks or just just around
like a
the
15
block?
to 20 minute walk. It has pretty reasonable evidence.
Just moving. You can I've even seen stuff that's if you're just cleaning the house, something active that's not that allows you to use
calf
the
raises.
Sugar. Yeah.
Even doing calf raises has been shown to reduce the blood sugar response. But let's not get too.
So I'm cleaning the house and you're just over there just jacking the calf.
I'm just imagining Bevo doing calf raises in the kitchen as he's.
My level of fitness was, I thought you were talking about Toyotas are good, Hiluxes are great. I was like, calf raises.
Yeah.
Cool, phrases about cars. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I was a calf raise. Right, okay, I get you. Hey, what's a king's breakfast look like?
Oof, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, so...
Because I'm taking notes here, right?
I mean, for breakfast today, I had 4 eggs, chicken, halloumi.
Chicken, what type of chicken?
What do you mean?
Like a roast chook, you had chicken breast, like chicken mince?
I was just at a cafe and they added, it was like chicken breast, yeah.
Okay.
1 piece of toast and some avocado and shit. And I don't know, Dan, is that kingly?
Like a full English? Is that too much?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty full English, particularly all the toast and hash brown crap is probably not the type of carbohydrates you'd look to have. But it's okay to have carbohydrates in the morning, but the idea of having cereal is definitely not a good idea.
Yeah, you want to hit the protein, right?
I think it's a good idea to have protein and healthy fats and some level, if you can, of lower GI carbohydrates, particularly as you're most metabolically primed to deal with carbohydrates effectively in the morning. Mm-hmm. But just going to have toast, with some butter and Vegemite or butter and jam is not a good idea because it really spikes your blood sugar and may lead to a blood sugar crash later in the morning, which will lead you to crave maybe more desirable but less healthy food.
And I think some of the craving stuff is important because that was my biggest challenge. So this new protocol that I'm going for is you wake up and you do your cardio in the morning, fully fasted. So that has some benefits. Then you go into eating your big breakfast, lunch, small afternoon, and kind of dial it down. But then I get really hungry in the evenings, and something you told me the other day.
Bone broth.
Bone broth.
Yeah. So just generally good for
it always comes back to fucking bone broth. Every healthy person I know.
That's what I started my day with.
The
bone
other
broth.
one was salt, right? Just salt on the tongue.
It's so one, like if you have a bit of bone broth, maybe with a bit of olive oil if you're particularly hungry, it's just going to quell that hunger. Two is it's going to have collagen and glycine, other things that are going to be good for your sleep quality.
What would you say if my sleep quality is pretty good? Because you've brought it up twice now, and I just don't know if it's like a one.
How do you feel in the morning?
You wake up late, you have to drag yourself into a cold shower.
Sorry, let me just qualify that. I get to sleep really easy, and I have what feels like a full rested sleep. I've never done a sleep tracker, so maybe I should try that.
Yeah.
But I wake up dehydrated all the time.
Yeah. Do you think you're meant to wake up not feeling good?
I think if there's an alarm involved, I just wake up like, fuck, I'd rather be sleeping.
Okay.
And that could be a mindset thing.
It can also be like a Corona type thing. But I guess like on the fasting component, the whole point of like those little things, those little hacks at the end is to like not absorb enough calories, or you can have some fats or whatever it is that doesn't actually break the whole benefit of the time restricting eating window.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Time restricted eating is optimizing your calorie intake to your circadian rhythm, and therefore experiencing greater metabolic health benefits. If you're like, it's just it's a more nuanced approach that you could adopt ongoing. That's more optimal to say trying to compress all your calories in a 6 to 4 hour window by fasting in the morning.
Okay.
So we've discussed what a king's breakfast is. High protein is obviously the goal that we're aiming for. So things like sausages, chicken breast, bacon probably doesn't hit the mark, I suppose, just in terms of like a practical outcome for, Steve-O, who works in an office in town, and he's got 3 kids, so he doesn't quite have time to like do like a full breakfast. What's he going to a cafe and what's he ordering?
Yeah, I mean, I would go and get some type of like avocado toast thing with some eggs, and I'd ask for extra eggs.
Yep.
And then if they do have chicken, whack that in, and that's like elite. Often they won't, or whatever.
Sausage maybe?
I try to steer away from sausages, bacon, and then I'm kind of even getting off like the smoked salmon, just because a lot of it's like, cooked, not in like,
So the healthiest version of a big
good.
breakfast, I suppose.
Yeah, because your body is craving calories and nutrition, and it's like, cool, this is like, it's going to be like ready to absorb it all. Here it goes. What are you going to give it? And you're like, hash browns and bacon and stuff, you're going to feel like shit.
Okay.
So the cleaner you can be.
It's good to know what not to eat.
We just like, if you can be a little bit more disciplined, or in my experience, being like the ROI of being like a little bit extra disciplined on that first meal has benefits that you'll feel all day.
Okay, we've got the king. Let's talk about the prince. When it comes to lunchtime, what's like an adequate meal there? What should I be trying to do both on a best case scenario
you're probably
and then a cafe busy working guy?
Yeah, well, I think almost everyone's going to be buying their lunch somewhere, like unless you're working from home, making your own lunch. So if you are buying lunch out, which pretty likely all of us are doing that, then it's a good option to try and find like a healthy bowl with extra protein.
So like fish bowl type stuff?
Yeah,
fish bowl bowls, if they've got them.
Without the sauce, as they pile that on and
what's the point? Like, what's the fucking point of doing that if you're going to take the sauce off? So like, what's another option? You know what I mean? I don't like it when someone's like, here's this option, but I've taken the good thing. Well, I don't want the option then. We wouldn't be having, like, what's something that isn't like that, I suppose?
Ask for the sauce on the side, and then you're in control of how much you put in there. Do you know how much sauce they put in there?
Yeah, I've like, you're throwing your hands up. You're having a little tantrum over there.
I'm not having a tantrum.
When I've started doing this, which is like whatever bowl or shit or whatever you're at, and you say, cool, I'm getting a healthy-ish thing, just ask them to put the sauce on the side, and they give you a little container of it, and you're like, holy shit, like that is a lot, and you just put half of it in, and then easy.
Okay, sure, understood. What can I bring from home that might be a better option that isn't something good that's been that the goodness has been taken out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like a good rule of thumb is to have some lean protein with some leafy greens or other vegetables and some lower GI carbohydrates. And so like, if that's a leftovers from your dinner the night before, then great. You can also find that at some cafes. It might cost you a little bit more. but there's typically like some good options that are available that avoid you just buying a sandwich or a wrap, which is literally just
A wrap's bad?
Well, like from my experience, kind of eating out a lot.
Or is it the sauces that are
anything?
in it?
Like honestly, the filling inside most sandwiches and wraps is pretty unhealthy. And then there's a huge blood sugar load from the bread or the wrap, and so it's typically just a more desirable, cheaper option for the cafes to offer, but isn't probably the best thing that's aligned to
you also just get less of the good stuff. Like the more wrap, the more bread, the less of like the good stuff.
One of those My Muscle Chef or macros or whatever those packaged meals are, one of them for lunch should be good enough, or is that too much?
Definitely, no, that's good enough.
I mean, they're not all equal. Some are like not great.
One,
others
not
are better.
like the sub 400 calorie ones, I suppose.
It's not so much the calories; it's more
it's
the
the
makeup
macro
of
mix.
it. Yeah, but if they're good because you're probably getting more protein than you'd normally get. You're getting some vegetables and shit. That's good, and you're getting less of a huge piece of bread or wrap or something like that. But I think so we've covered a couple of the different types of fasting, time restricted even. So there's like, don't do it in the morning and then eat later in the day all the way through your window. And that's like more convenient. So it has some cognitive sharpness, like experiential benefits like that. Then going into the other one, the time restricted eating, which is kind of mapping the circadian rhythm. You're eating the kingly meal down to the pauper, and then trying to fast into your sleep. That can be tough in my experience. So sometimes taking the bone broth at night to curb the kind of hunger cravings is really successful. But I think haven't really spoken about the last form that we touched on at the start, which was these longer fasts, the longevity fast.
Yep.
Like, what are we talking there?
Yeah, so like a longer fast where cause your body needs energy, right? You're either getting that from calories you're consuming or you're getting it from calories you've stored. And the calories you've stored is fat. It's also stored glucose in the form of glycogen in your liver and your muscle. And also muscle itself can be converted from protein into glucose. And so like as your body depletes more of the stored glucose and glycogen in your liver and your muscle, it then starts to look more for other forms of energy, likely through fat. And so you start to shift into eventually something called ketosis, which has been more popularized. And so as you start to exhaust your glycogen stores and your body's searching for fat and other sources of energy, you are down-regulating your like anabolic pathway, which is called mTOR, and you're up-regulating more of your cellular maintenance. And that's autophagy, where basically your body starts to go through more renovation and renewal at a cellular level.
Autophagy, is this the same thing?
Yes.
Okay, what is that?
Autophagy.
It's the cleaning out. It's the broomstick to the dusty corners of the cupboard.
It's like doing it's
a
like
bond clean?
cellular cleaning or maintenance as opposed to like growth and renovation.
So, and when does that kick in? So I stop eating for one day and I get the bond clean for free. Is that what's happening?
Well, yeah. So it depends on the individual and like where they're at and how much carbohydrates they're having in their overall diet. But like typically you'd probably deplete all of your liver and muscle glycogen probably in a day and a half. And so
do juice cleansers count?
Well, like,
sorry, I shouldn't have laughed at that. That's an honest question.
Because we get questions from listeners, and one of the questions that we've had written in is, does having a flat white during a fasting period render my fast null and void?
Well, not null and void, but it's like it's obviously kicking you out of your fast. Black coffee is probably better.
But
is it still something? Is the idea to only have water?
I mean, that's the best version, but black coffee, what are the thoughts?
Yeah, like one, like it's a trap to fall into. You have coffee to stimulate you even more and to delay the onset of your appetite. But it can also lead to more agitation. So the more you extend into your fast, the more your body's starting to release adrenaline and cortisol to surface that energy, right? And it can get to a point where it's quite agitating. If you've ever gone through a multi-day fast, not only are you hungry, which eventually subdues, but like you can feel a little bit agitated, and you might find it harder to fall asleep, and you'll wake up earlier because your body is activating more of the sympathetic nervous system to release energy to fuel your day. And so caffeine on top of that can sometimes be a little bit excessively activating and agitating.
And we don't know like this process of, cleaning out the cupboard, the autophagy.
Yep.
We don't know the actual impact on longevity that has yet, do we? Or where are we at in terms of like, if I do this, if I do a 3-day fast every month, am I going to live an extra 5 years?
No, like I don't think the effect on like all-cause mortality and like longevity in that way has been quantified. But it's important to bear in mind that your body goes through 2 phases. One is growth, which is mTOR. It's like more muscle synthesis and more anabolic. And then you have something that's, I suppose, a bit more catabolic. And in that moment, your body has an opportunity in the absence of calories to do more maintenance and clean out. And so that can lead to more effective function of your mitochondria. It can lead to the apoptosis or cellular death of senescent or like malfunctioning cells.
Which is like cancer cells.
That's right. As you get older, you have a greater prevalence of senescent cells or malfunctioning cells. And if you're constantly consuming calories, then your body's not always so able to identify and terminate.
Are you saying that there is like a correlation between fasting and preventative health?
Calorie restriction is known in both mouse models in a better study design, but as well as in blue zones in humans.
Blue zones being where people live
longer,
yeah.
Calorie restriction is strongly correlated with longevity outcomes.
And that's not multi-day fasting, that's just time restrictive eating in terms of...
No, calorie restriction. So you can do calorie restriction in any way. You could do 3 days of fasting. You could do a fasting mimicking diet, where you have like a couple of days of like 500 calories, which basically mimics fasting.
Yeah.
Or you could do like intermittent fasting, where you're fasting up until 5 p.m. and having 1, 2, 3 meals or whatever it is to get whatever your desired calorie target is. There are different ways to trigger it. In the absence of calories, your body eventually starts to trigger processes that is more about cellular renewal as opposed to growth.
Okay. And then my last question on this, which I think we'll all agree is the most important one, is yes or no, if you do a 3-day fast, do you lose muscle or not?
Yes.
Okay, I said yes or no, but I meant yes with a few.
Yes, but please justify it for
me.
So
thank you for answering that the way I asked.
Absolutely. So
as a percentage of fat to muscle.
Yeah. So as I said, like there's three ways your body stores energy, right? Glucose with water in the form of glycogen in your liver and your muscle. Goes after the liver first, then your muscle. Muscle glycogen. The second is your body can go through a process called gluconeogenesis, which basically creates glucose from amino acids which are in your lean muscle tissue, right? And the third is to burn fat, lipolysis. And so it preferentially releases glycogen and then starts to go after a mix of muscle and fat. The longer you fast, the better it becomes at surfacing fat and burning fat. And that's why people go after ketosis.
At what percentage betterness?
You will, if you are fully fasting, no calories, you will experience a loss in lean muscle mass. That the amount of that depends on how much testosterone you naturally have, how much human growth hormone, which are anti-catabolic.
But usually it would be more fat than muscle.
And the way they test this is that they do nitrogen balance. And so where they do during a fast in your urine, they test basically the amount of urea, which is the nitrogen-dense molecule your body uses to excrete nitrogen. And so the amount of nitrogen is a way to infer how much amino acid loss there is. And so absolutely after a couple of days, that starts to kick up. As you then move into ketosis, it starts to stabilize. But you can expect that you will lose some lean muscle mass as you go through and do fasting.
And so my question here, I don't know if you'll have evidence on this, but since we a couple of weeks ago spoke about ice baths and the conversion from white fat into brown fat or beige fat, if you have more beige fat, which is more available, and then you go into something like a 3-day fast, hypothetically, would you be converting more fat before destroying muscle?
Yes. So you're more metabolically versatile. And so in this modern world where we're having so much carbohydrates at every meal and all throughout the day, we've become a little bit less adapted to switching between burning fat for energy and burning glucose. And so if you have done things to support more metabolic versatility, then you're likely to switch into ketosis earlier and therefore preserve more muscle mass. But this is just a great example. There's a trade-off in so many different health topics when it comes to optimizing for longevity and performance.
Okay.
So by performance, you're including mental clarity, because that's one thing I guess I would always be concerned about doing
however
this.
Performance means to you. So some people performance for them might be an athlete, and so their functional strength might be really important. Other people who want to be jacked and shredded, like Benny, his overall lean muscle mass is important to him. Others, who are prioritizing more around mental acuity and performance, which has a whole bunch of different variables that influence that. It depends on what you're really optimizing for. But again, there are so many health topics where there is a trade-off between things that are going to drive your longevity and things that are going to drive your near-term performance.
I reckon it'd be really helpful if, like in next week's potty, like in Top Gear, how they have sort of like a board. If we could like split it into like mental, longevity, and then like jackedness, because like ice baths
and shredded, that's another one, isn't it?
Jacked and shredded sort of like works as a little combo meal for him.
Yeah, the combination of protocols to get each goal.
Because it's just like, I would like to know, like, let's say I'm focusing on longevity, like ice baths may not be as important as like jacked and shredded. So in terms of like time restrictive eating for mental acuity and like career focus is really important for me.
So and I think this is the way we started the episode, which is kind of like, if you're skipping breakfast and you're starting, so you're fasting, intermittent fasting, and you're beginning your eating window at night, that is going to be easier and you're going to feel the cognitive benefits, so the performance benefits mentally, or that's been my experience. The next one was eating in the mornings, like the eating like a king.
Yep.
This is better for body composition, better for sleeping, etc.
Yep.
I find it really challenging at night to
Great for jacked and shredded.
Yes, so this is a jacked and shredded.
Jacked and shredded
protocol.
remix.
And then the last one we were just talking about there is these longer fasting windows, which are kind of like pushing past 24 hours, 3-day fast, 7-day fast. And that's pushing you more into longevity, the restart, sweeping out the cancer cells from your cupboard.
Bond clean. Right. And mental acuity during that period, is it?
Oh, there'd be a transition period. So like at first, in a multi-day, week-long fast, let's call it, at first you'd experience a big spike in noradrenaline and cortisol, and so you would be more energetically active and maybe a little bit agitated. Then as you start to transition from using that stored glucose as energy into trying to be more in ketosis, in that transition period, you'll go through something called the keto flu. And that means you're a bit
polite way to say
you're a bit fuzzy. You're a bit fuzzy. It's like you got a flu. As you then come out of that into proper ketosis, you're going to experience a really powerful cognitive benefit. And that will continue to extend until you terminate your fast.
I did a 7-day juice cleanse, and one of the things I found on day like 3 or 4 is like swallowing was difficult. Like when I ate after the 7 days, it like physically hurt to swallow. Like my body had lost familiarity with chewing and swallowing.
Yeah, so I think that puts that back in that if we're going to the Top Gear buckets, and we've got like Jack Shred, mental acuity, then we've got this coward bucket again, I think. And I think not being able to chew after a 7-day juice cleanse probably is top of that list.
Well, to me, like it was more like a liquid diet, juice cleanses. I thought that was a proper thing. Has that been debunked?
Probably
is it a stupid
calorie, maybe?
I mean, like
I lost 6 kilos in a week.
Yeah. So like in any either calorie restriction or carbohydrate restriction, again, you're going to deplete that liver and muscle glycogen, and so you lose a lot of water weight as a result, because glycogen is just glucose stored with 4 molecules of water.
Yeah.
And so in any diet, you're going to experience a bit of a step change in a couple of days, right? But that's not mostly fat; it's mostly water weight. And so important to bear in mind. Then in any calorie restricting diet, like a juice diet or a full fast, it's going to drive more fat burning, potentially some muscle mass loss, as we said. But doing a juice diet is not full calorie restriction, so you're probably not optimizing as much for the longevity benefits. But you might get some other benefits. Like if you're having a lot of foods that are triggering inflammation because you've got poor gut health, and you just switch to something which is easier for your body to deal with.
I'd like to do a gut health episode also. I've heard a lot about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's...
Yeah, we can all show our stools and rate it on the chart.
I guess there was one other question that kind of came in, which is actually funny because funny for 2 reasons. So it's, what is the go with the story about David Pocock waking up in the middle of the night to smash a protein shake? Should I do this? The funny part to me is when I was in year 9 and I was playing water polo, I played David Pocock in year 12, and he...
Wait, how old is David Pocock?
Be late 30s, maybe early 40s.
Yeah.
How did you play?
Well, he's honourable David Pocock now.
Yeah, I fucking love David
Anyway,
Pocock.
lifted me up with one arm and threw me like 3 meters. And so after that point, because I heard the rumor that he smashed protein shakes in the middle of the night, I started getting up in the middle of the night and doing.
And Benny's vision for his life henceforth was, I want to be jacked and shredded like that.
I like that you followed a high school rumor.
And now I have terrible sleep insomnia, disrupted sleep. But anyway, so the question is, what's the story with the Proe in the middle of the night? And should I, like Benny, do this?
Yeah. So like, a lot of people have casein protein, slower release protein, before they go to bed, so that you have amino acids available to you to support more.
What are those two proteins in terms of having it before bed? If we're talking about
so casein is a different type of protein. It's basically longer chains that take more time to release, and so if you have that before bed, then
found in a
milk.
Okay, sure, right.
Yep. But like the supplement is casein protein. Okay. Derived from milk, just like wheys. And so the idea is that you're going to have more extended release of amino acids to support more muscle synthesis while you're asleep. This may disrupt your quality of sleep because you're still kind of trying to digest as you're going into deeper waves of sleep. And so that would be shallower and less frequent.
Do you think it's worth it?
Definitely not.
I personally, I just don't see the need to try and push to that margin of maximizing muscle synthesis in the trade-off of like the other
juice
effects.
Isn't worth the squeeze. Well, milk isn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah. And there's also like, if you have consumed food, your like circulating level of amino acids and fat and other things in your bloodstream afterwards can last, up to 6 to plus 8 hours. And so like even if you have dinner and then go to bed after 4 hours, you're still going to have nutrients available to you in your body whilst you're asleep.
Yeah. But to answer your other question, David Pocock, 35. I'm 32.
Oh, wow. I thought he was a bit older. Good on him.
What do you mean good on me? I was playing up 3 years.
No. This is Pocock's time to shine.
Thrown out of the pool.
Yeah, I was, you've got him, Benny. You don't got him.
He's a thick boy. I saw him thick boy. This is just a random one. I used to eat like 20 slices of Kraft cheese before bed because it gave me cheese dreams. What's the logic in that?
Cheese dreams.
Mate, I don't know.
But like they were saying eating cheese can give you weird dreams.
What?
Is that a digestive thing?
I don't know. I've never heard that.
You sometimes
if anybody knows anything about
cheese dreams.
It was a tough time. I lived in Toowoomba.
So what do cheesy dreams involve?
You would have really psycho, not quite lucid, but like vivid dreams. And the idea was that the makeup of cheese was quite complex, and the stomach breaking it down would be like an hour or two like longer than regular food. So when you would hit REM, your stomach would still be digesting, and that would have an effect on your brain. Absolutely zero to do with what we're talking about. But if you want to just have a couple of slices of Gouda before bed and let me know how it goes, I'll be keen.
Well, I mean, I'm just kind of Googling this cheese dream thing. So in 2005, the British Cheese Board tried to put the rumours to rest with a little study. So 200 volunteers fed them 20 grams of cheese about half an hour before their bedtime, asked them to record their dreams and sleep quality. Of the 200 studies, 67% record their dreams, blah, blah, blah. However, so there was no reported bad nightmares related, but the type of dream you had did depend on the type of cheese you ate.
They need to do a hero dose. They're doing coward doses.
A hero dose of blue cheese.
Hero dose. Some Stilton just to get you going. Look, nothing really to do with what we're talking about, but shows that diets can just be insane, and our how we approach diet is obviously very different.
Yeah, so I was getting up to do protein in the middle of the night, and you were doing cheese dreams.
Just fanging some Leicester. Well, I mean, this chat has introduced so many things that I am not completely familiar with, like the keto diets, things like 2 and 5. I'm looking forward to getting more into that as we push along with the potty. But for now, this has been the How to Get Good podcast. Thank you, Benny. Thank you, Dan. And we'll be back soon.
Thanks, Bevo.